and degraded. The President, on numerous occasions, has warned those that are carrying out activities in wetlands to leave the wetlands. And yet, on the ground, people continue to degrade and to use wetlands in ways that are not sustainable. Which raises the question, are we serious about the preservation of the environment? This is the big debate, and that's what we discuss. Let's meet our panelists.
Our panel tonight, Christine Kaya Nachimwero is a Ugandan politician who serves as Chiboga District Woman Member of Parliament and Shadow Minister for Water and Environment. Nachimwero holds a bachelor's degree in environmental management and a master's degree in land use and regional development. For 18 years, she worked in integrated risk management and previously coordinated the Parliamentary Forum on Climate Change. She was also the chairperson for the 20 Ugandan Parliamentary Fora. Honorable Nachimwero is a member of the Green Climate Fund Designated Authority Committee and forms part of the Uganda Climate Change and Gender Thematic Negotiation Group. David Kreba is Officer of Forest and Biodiversity. He coordinates forest and biodiversity issues for African partners at National Association of Professional Environmentalists, which is the Uganda representative of Friends of Earth, FOI. He also analyzes the United Nations program reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, RED. David also implements the Green Livelihood Alliance program, which includes Just Transition project entitled Strengthen Community Cultural Governance. Dr. Kankwasa Barega is the Executive Director of National Environment Management Authority, Nema. Dr. Kankwasa holds a PhD in Environment and Natural Resources Management and for some time was a lecturer of forestry at Makerere University. He has previously worked as a director at Community Conservation Initiative Uganda, as a principal wildlife officer and commissioner of wildlife conservation at the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities. Dr. Kankwasa has represented Uganda at several international conservation fora in many aspects, including being the global vice president for the UN Convention on Migratory Species, President UN Gorilla Agreement, Chairperson Standing Committee of African Eurasian Waterbird Agreement, and National Focal Point for Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel tonight.
There you have it. That's our panel for tonight. On Sunday, the 5th of June 2022, Uganda will join the global community to commemorate World Environment Day. And I would like to start with our panelists. Very briefly, as we get to World Environment Day, I'd like your quick view on, as a country, how are we getting there? I will start with you, Honorable.
Good evening, viewers. Thank you for tuning in to us. We are heading to the climax. Yes, World Environment Day will be the climax. We have been moving on with a number of interventions and activities just to remind ourselves of the responsibility we need to put forward as a country, as individuals, as households, as sub-counties, as parishes. So we are supposed to climax the celebrations on 5th June, and we are set actually to climax the activities, and but we are seeing a lot of communities not aware. Many are not aware of the need for us to take part. Many of our people are still finger pointing. It is not me who did this wrongly, it is him. It is the other countries, it is not Uganda. It is the other countries to give us support. I have nothing to do about it. So people still think that environmentalists like us, academically qualified environmentalists, probably should work so hard with the developed world to ensure that environmental management is observed. So people have their mentalities, but all in all, climate change is a reality. We no longer need to define it to the people. We no longer need to define climate change to the agriculturists, to the infrastructure engineers, and very many sectors, people who work in different sectors. So people define it. Oh, we can see the rains are no longer coming the way they used. The amounts have reduced. The occurrence is funny, you know. The frequency has reduced. The volumes, you know, are not projected. So the definition of climate change actually can be done by every sector in its own manner. So our people are aware that it is a change, but they have not yet felt that, you know, it is part of me and I should be able to do something as an individual. That is still lacking.
All right.
Yeah.
If I may go to Mr. Daniel Kareba. David, I beg your pardon. Well, as we go into, you know, World Environment Day 2022, are you proud of where we are as a country in relation to the commitments we have made in relation to the environment?
Thank you very much, and thank you, CTV, for inviting us, or inviting me to be part of this meeting. And good evening, viewers. We are set, but I think the word Environmental Day, we are looking at kind of evaluation. We have only one Earth. We don't have alternative Earth where we can run to. What is it we have done for the environment? Or what is it that we have done to the environment? Because we have produced children, we are living, and we should not compromise the future generation to meet their demands. So we are set, and on 5th June, it's a day when we will be kind of evaluating the environment in which we live. Are we friendly to our environment? Is there something that we need to do? Climate change is real. How do we address it? Where have we gone wrong? Where do we need to put right? Uganda is a signatory to a number of conventions. Uganda has very good policies. Uganda has got very good laws and has got staff that are into environment. We have environmental policy. What is it that we are doing? What is it that we are doing right, and what is it that we are doing wrong? So I think on Environmental Day, it's a day when we look at something that shelters us and how we feel we can move ahead with it. Where we have gone wrong, we correct it, and where we are doing better, we continue to do the best.
All right. Let's go to Dr. Akankwasa, who is the Executive Director of Nema, and the Nema Act, you know, basically stipulates that Nema is the principal environment management, you know, agency in the country. As we get into World Environment Day 2022, are you happy with where we are as a country and the progress we are making?
Thank you very much, our dear host. Good evening, viewers. I would say it's a mixed feeling. I wouldn't say I'm very happy with our progress, but the day is meant for us to reflect on exactly that. So I'm happy that the day has come, and that it's an opportunity for us to reflect on what we've done well and what we've done wrongly, and agree where we need to correct so that we can move forward together. So from my point of view, it's a good thing to celebrate 50 years of global environment management. As you know, we are celebrating 50 years since Stockholm, 1972. I think a lot has been achieved at global scale, even at a national scale. And so there is something to celebrate, but the challenges ahead are still so many. And so to me, it's a day to reflect on where we've come from, and not a day to, you know, chest thump ourselves that we've done so well. But we can use the day to recommit towards living in harmony with nature.
Yes, creating an earth where, you know, humans and nature can live together in harmony. And yet, the traction, you know, and like Honorable said, the citizens don't seem to be taking these conversations as seriously as they should, and yet they feel the effects of climate change. From where you sit, why aren't these being taken as serious conversations? Because ordinarily what will happen is, you know, conversations like this will happen at a time like this, when the global commemoration is going to happen, and then there's silence.
I think it's not true that there is silence, because we are here, we are talking about it. So already that shows that we are discussing as a nation. We would have loved the discussion to go deep to the grassroots. As the Honorable Shadow Minister for Water and Environment said, this discussion hasn't gone deep down to the grassroots. It hasn't. It hasn't, and we still have an obligation and a duty to sensitize the masses, to bring this reality to the local person, that you see what you do here affects the season of your farming. What you do here affects the quality of the water you are going to drink or cook with. What you do here will affect the productivity. If you use this chemical, tomorrow you are not going to have bees to pollinate your agricultural farms, and so the agriculture will collapse. So we have an obligation to continue educating our people up to the grassroots level, to ensure that this debate translates into the local situation on the ground.
Right.
It moves from an elitist discussion of us here in Kampala down to the grassroots, down to the local person in Nakapiripiriti. They should all appreciate these issues. So the duty to sensitize the citizens is a big one. It's a big one, and it's something that we must do.
All right.
Yeah.
Dear viewer, would like to receive your views on Uganda's efforts to conserve the environment and the areas where you think we need to do better. So please use the hashtag CTV Big Debate, and we will be able to, you know, benefit from your questions and your comments. Well, whereas the people at the grassroots may not have taken up this conversation as much as they should, the highest office in the land has taken this conversation up. In fact, the president has had a number of, you know, utterances around the environment and the way the environment is being used. We have put together a few clips, definitely not comprehensively what the president has been saying in relation to the environment, but let's watch this to just give us, you know, a deeper understanding of what the president's views are in relation to the way the environment is being handled in Uganda.
Now the pollution is in two categories. Category number one is pollution due to greed. The second category is pollution due to lack of resources. You see, for instance, like in Africa, the biggest damage to the environment is the lack of electricity. If you don't have electricity, then how would you stop peasants cutting trees to use them as firewood, as a biomass fuel? In the case of Uganda here, these peasants are destroying something like 40 billion cubic meters of wood per annum in firewood. Now that is environmental damage due to need, to acute need.
It is from the wetlands that we can get water for irrigation, because we are now moving into serious agriculture. Serious agriculture cannot depend on rain-fed agriculture only. It is irrigation. But where will the irrigation of water come from if you have already tried the wetlands? The wetlands are also a habitat for creatures which are very useful to us, but for which we spend nothing. The butterflies, the birds, foreigners foreigners come to see these creatures and they bring money as tourists.
All right, there are some of the views of the president. And, I was hoping we'd have the clip where he says, you people in the wetlands, get out of there. And I think he even asked the question, are you frogs, to be in the wetlands? And so let's begin with the issue of wetlands. Honorable, in your view, where are we getting it wrong?
There are some mistakes that probably were done earlier. There are some questions also that are not yet answered in that line. By the time we got the Wetlands Act in 1985, there are some people who owned the land in the wetlands. In Chivoga there, where I come from, we have wetlands, we have land titles that had wetlands before 1985. And so here comes the Wetlands Act that provides that nobody should hold, nobody owns any part of the wetland. So it is still a challenge. Somebody's like, I preserved this wetland for a long time. My grandfather did so. How do I just vacate and don't gain anything from what I preserved for all that long? So there is that question. And then the ministry doesn't have money to compensate these people. For it is just like nobody should own, and actually subsequent sale of such land should be able to cut off the wetland portions from the earlier land titles, which is not easy. It has some questions. Then the other issue is that the ministry doesn't have enough funds to survey the demarcations, the wetland demarcations. There's a time when we went ahead to, demarcate and somehow chase away some people from the wetlands. But we need that day-to-day surveillance to actually keep on track the boundaries of the wetlands. And then we still have a selective implementation of wetland laws, because we see there are some big shots whose activities in the wetlands are untampered, and then the poor people in most cases are immediately chased away. There's a time when, before he joined Nema, there's a time when we even asked Nema officials, do you have some big shots that you really fear? You tell us if you have some shots and we deal with them as members of parliament. But it appeared that also the Nema boss at that time could not list the big shots. But
does that comment mean that the current Nema ED has gone for the big shots?
We are yet to check it out. But the previous one could not. So, from the environment impact assessment, especially concerning the activities to be done in the wetlands, some people list what they will do in the wetlands. But I think Nema may not have funds to survey, to check if these people actually commit to what they signed for, commit to the real activities that they plan to do in the wetlands. And it's still a challenge. So people may make alarms, oh, come here, this person who was supposed to grow rice is now taking sand. But when Nema doesn't have funds to follow up with all those activities, they need to finance, I call them environment police, to be well equipped, but also to add on some technical expertise and a serious number of people to help us guard our wetlands, which Nema I think doesn't have funds, because based on the budgets that we saw, Nema may not have funds to do all that. So people will keep making alarms, pointing fingers, Nema, you're not doing this. but they don't have funds. The allocations are not commensurate to the alarms that the public is making. So that is a big challenge I saw. We kept on, fronting the need to even to have funds. There is provision for the Nema fund, which is empty up to today, and yet there were provisions that would enable this fund to acquire money, and this money would help in surveillance, in following up, in monitoring compliance to the laws. But up to today, the fund is empty, and we requested the Ministry of Finance to follow up with what we set ourselves to do, because natural resources is a sector that really contributes a lot of revenue to the consolidated fund. But we just requested the portions of that comes from the sector itself to come back and help us, because if we don't invest some more money in the sector, it will not be able to still raise the revenue that we currently get.
As the shadow minister, did you have these views, these proposals in your alternative policy? Because this is budget time, and even if those proposals are not passed, it is on the record that provision or advice was given about the same in alternative policies proposed by the opposition.
Yes, in most of the alternatives we have been presenting some of these views, but because sometimes they are calling on some people to give up with portions of their budgets, they also don't want to listen to some of these stories. But we have kept on pushing. Yeah, if you could check the answers on some of the responses I was giving, that was one of them. We need the Nema fund to have its money, such that even if the general budgetary allocations are not enough, we have something to look up to. There is some money that can help us do some of these activities. But, sometimes appreciating, but I have to also comment that the budgetary processes is a tight exercise, which does not give us enough time to actually submit on most of these. I remember I had planned to share my alternative statement in the Committee for Natural Resources, and they kept on saying, you see, let's first finish this, and the shadow minister will come last and give us your options. Up to when we just shared, soft copies. Which we really...
You hoped the members read, but...
through by the committee members. So, the prioritization by the people as far as environment management is concerned is not in line. The prioritization does not come through when it comes to budgetary allocation. That's what I need to put up to our listeners and viewers.
Okay. If I may go to Mr. Kareba, and even as we talk about allocations, if we could just go back to the issue of the wetlands. It so happens that last week we were talking about, here on the big debate, we were talking about the state of the economy. And in the conversation, degradation of the environment came up. And we did talk about the fact that it seems like, wetlands have become, a fertile place for industries and factories, and we're wondering what the relationship is. Do factories do better in wetlands? But on the way we've managed the wetlands, where are we getting it wrong from where you sit as a member of the National Association for Professional Environmentalists?
Thank you very much. I think Honorable talked about the issue of budget. I think the problem is not the budget really. Look at the approvals that have been done in wetlands. Look at rice farming in Rera. Look at sand mining in Rera. Look at Rosebud in a Ramsar site. Look at the sewer system that is happening. I think there is also lack of goodwill. Either there are big shots up there that force the institution that is mandated to manage wetlands, and they are pushed to do things that they ought not have done. this is the new executive director. This is my first time to meet him. But surely, if you look at activities that are happening in wetlands, most of them, they even have licenses. If you look at some of these people, they even have current titles. Titles, after even the president had said, all the titles should be cancelled. Now, is that an issue of budget? I think it is not. So I think we need to rethink, in this era of climate change, we are being hit hard by unprecedented seasons, that we look at how best we can manage them. We are not saying development should stop, but what we are saying, there should be a balance. If you are talking about a Ramsar site gazetted by the international instrument, and wetland of international importance, then again don't allow infilling. You know, this is a basin. Lake Victoria is a basin. To a number of countries, the water that comes from this basin and other regions goes up to Egypt. There are many countries, including Sudan, that benefit from the water that comes from here. Now, if the wetland, you allow rosebud to grow flowers, not even food, flowers for export, surely the budget issue, yes, it is there, but it is not the most important issue that is leading to the destruction of our wetlands. One, we need the sensitization of our communities who are neighboring these small wetlands where they grow mayuni and a few food crops. But the biggest problem are these agribusinesses. Agribusiness projects are the ones that clear a very big chunk of our wetlands, including contaminating the water that is generated within those basins. If you look at right farming, they use chemicals in the farming process. It eventually gets way into the lake. So you'll find the marine ecosystem being compromised, but also the neighboring communities that benefit from the water that comes from those wetlands also compromised. I think there is need for the goodwill from even government. The new executive director is here. He has to do something really to ensure that what is happening today should not increase. It should at least be brought back. We have to do a bit of restoration because we have only one earth. One earth. The moment we destroy our own shelter, we have nowhere to run to.
All right. I like that you keep emphasizing that we have one earth. And if I'm not mistaken, 1972, which Doctor referred to, that was the theme, right? One earth. And Uganda is going with our earth, conserve for life, at least for this year's commemoration. Well, as we, as we look at the issue of the goodwill from the government, one would look at the fact that laws have been passed, policies have been passed. You did talk about presidential directives have been made. Doesn't this point to goodwill?
On paper, that's what it shows, because we even have environmental police. I one time went to the Rosebud flower farm, only to be chased by those very environmental police people. They chased me away. I think in the protection of the investor. So why do there is environmental police? Where those policies are there, but they are not in the interest of people. They are not in the interest of environment. They are not in the interest of marine ecosystem. They are not in the interest of protecting wetland species or the environmental natural resources for the benefit of these small people. Forget about these big shots who keep accumulating, but the small person, the community person who goes fishing in that small wetland and picks a small either harpocrime or tilapia or as a food basket, that one is compromised. If you look at the big chunk that Rosebud filled with soil, that was a community land. Okay, there were a few activities of bricklaying and brick making, which was not as destructive as infilling, at the same time using chemicals, but also bringing in the element of health challenges. Because people that were working in those very plantations, in that very flower farm, came out complaining about the challenges associated with chemical use on their health and livelihoods.
All right, let's bring Dr. Kankwasa into this conversation, at least this part on wetlands. And of course, when wetlands are mentioned in Uganda, a lot of attention goes to Nema because of the mandate that Nema has. If you could let us know, what's going on there, because, when we hear the president continuously commenting about what's going on in wetlands and the misuse in there, then is Nema actually alive to these realities and doing something about it?
Thank you very much for the question. One, I think I need to first clarify. There is a lot of association of wetlands with Nema, which is good association, and we welcome it. But we would also like Ugandans to associate with us wildlife conservation in Uganda Wildlife Authority, forest conservation in the National Forestry Authority, and water and lakes and rivers conservation in the Directorate of Water Resources Management, and wetlands management in the Wetland Management Department. We don't want to be associated with the only problems. We should also share the successes. I don't know whether it's because NEMA's logo has a wetland that we are associated with wetland so much, but NEMA is responsible for all segments of the environment, not only wetlands. But coming back to wetlands, we are not doing well as a country, as you know. 2015, we had about 15.5% of our land covered by wetlands. As of 2017, we are talking about only 13%. So you can see that there is a downward trend. And even the 13% we are talking about, only 8.9% is intact. The rest is wetland under degradation. Now there are very many issues that have led to wetland degradation. As you heard the president say, there are issues of greed, the big shots you are talking about, and the factories, and that cannot be issues of need. There are also issues of need, livelihoods. For example, you go to Vuked region, you will find people growing rice everywhere in wetlands because of need, because of livelihoods. And so we must find alternative sources of livelihoods for communities so that they can be encouraged to leave destructive use of wetlands to sustainable use of wetlands for enterprises like fish farming, for example, on the edges of wetlands. That would still provide the jobs, it would still provide the incomes to our people, but the wetlands would remain safe. So we must stop further loss of wetlands, and in that direction, NEMA, effective 2nd September, as you know, we suspended any further issuance of permits and certificates in wetlands to give the wetlands a fresh breath, a new lease of life, as we develop our capacity to monitor the activities which are already approved in wetlands. I want to agree with the Honorable Shadow Minister for Environment that the biggest problem for degradation of environment generally has been lack of investment in the protection of the same. It has been lack of investment in the protection of the same. Very many people will fear saying, you know, that the money is not the problem and funding is not the problem, but I would say funding is the problem. And this is the reasons why. We all agree that we have very good policies and laws. At least all panelists here agree that we have the good policies and laws. That's the starting point. We have the National Development Plan, we have strategic plans, we even have a 10-year restoration plan for Uganda now, under the 10-year decade of environment restoration declared by United Nations. But the question remains institutional capacities and operational financing. Even if you talk about raising awareness, that's already funding. You can't raise awareness without money. Even if you talk about enforcing permits and the certificates already issued in wetlands, that still requires money. Now, if you go on paper, you will find that most of the environment and social impact assessments approved are all okay on paper. They are all okay. I doubt that there is any environment and social impact assessment approved by Nema where the condition is go and destroy a wetland or go and degrade.
It doesn't have to be in those words, because what you don't, they usually say what you don't, expressly prohibit, is taken as allowed.
But the law prohibits degradation from the word go. So you cannot issue an environment and social impact assessment certificate that contradicts the law, because a permit or a certificate is subordinate to the law. The law already criminalizes degradation, and so there is no way a certificate can allow degradation because it can't supersede the law. But what normally happens is that the conditions stated in the certificates are not necessarily 100% adhered to by developers, as the Honorable was talking about. Somebody will bring an EIA for fish farming, for example, which you will approve, and it is very good. Deep down in Chiboga, somebody will start an apartment on the same site, which was approved for fish farming. On your record in Nema, you will still be okay. Fish farming, it is okay, sustainable activity. On the ground, it is different. You have apartments on the wetland. So, you need capacity to monitor, first of all, to do baseline verification of the site before you issue the certificate. You need to have resources to visit the site, or at least have technology to see the site in the office before you issue the permit. And then you need the capacity to monitor adherence of the conditions you've issued in the permits. So, in my view, the permits are not the problem. The problem is adherence to conditions in the permits and certificates. And the biggest cause of that is institutional capacity and financing. I always give this example of forests. Maybe we shall reach the forest.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. National Forestry Authority has staff that are less than, they are about 300. They are about 300 staff. Yeah? But they are in charge of 506 central forest reserves. 506 central forest reserves. Meaning that if you distribute all staff of NFA as an institution, including administrative assistants, accountants, ED, drivers, if you give each one of them one central forest reserve, you will still not cover 80% of forest reserves for management. You see what I'm talking about. We can come back to Nema, supposed to police wetlands and other environment segments. You have 132 staff, less than the number of districts in Uganda. So even if you sent someone per district, you would still not cover the districts. But that's one per district. Now, how about Kampala alone, where you are going to have, say, 1,000 sites under development? Unless there is goodwill from the developer to comply, voluntary compliance,
all right, but
you will have a challenge.
But you also have their partnerships, their other stakeholders, civil society organizations, because if I just visited your social media, for example,
yes,
people are always taking photos and
yes,
saying, Nema,
yes,
this is going on in this area.
Absolutely.
Are you aware? So
yes,
you don't have to be in all those places,
yeah,
because
you need the capacity
there's people who are
respond.
interested.
No, you need the capacity to respond to those queries. If you send me a message that you see there is a wetland being degraded in Chiboga, I need the capacity to go there. Otherwise, I will just observe your post and I will feel bad, but nothing will be done about it. You will need a vehicle, you will need fuel.
Is it and these funds
where I can give you the situation?
Is it the lack of budget only being used as an excuse?
No, I can give you the situation. At least I can speak for Nema, since I am in charge. I'm the accounting officer for Nema. This financial year, Nema has a budget of 13 billion Uganda shillings. 13 billion is only enough to pay salaries, gratuities, medical insurance and office running. Zero funds for operations, zero. When I say zero, I mean zero. Not small, but zero.
That's zero from government. Don't development partners come in?
Development partners cannot fund law enforcement. I'm not aware of any development partner who funds law enforcement. Maybe you can bring him to my attention. They cannot. Development partners will always fund development projects, research and development projects. They cannot fund recurrent expenditure of you sending your staff to go and inspect, to go and do law enforcement. You will never get any development partner, because law enforcement is a primary role of government. So you cannot get a development. I've not seen development partners funding law enforcement activities. It is very rare. Maybe there could be cases, but very minimal cases. Development partners fund projects, not recurrent expenditure.
Honorable, in relation to the issues that Doctor has raised, for starters, should we say that the budget that Parliament has passed for Nema and for other agencies is for people to receive salary and gratuity and not to do the work that they're actually there to do?
They are ready to execute the work they are supposed to do, but they do not have the means. Unlike the ED stating, development partners, their contribution is voluntary. So sometimes they can bring it this financial year, next year they may decide to chop it off. Now, like the saga we had for COVID, every development partner was like, I've switched my funding to COVID. I've switched my funding to COVID, and you can't force somebody. So even if you had probably signed a contract for 4 years in 2019, 2020, much of the funding went to COVID management. So, and by the way, in the eyes of development partners, as countries, we need to first show commitment. That is when we also interest them. Everything, they must first see commitment. The budgets are small. Yeah, much of the money you see actually is going to salaries. So to me, the biggest challenge now we have in Uganda as far as natural resources management is concerned is financing.
All right. This financing that we're talking about, these budget cuts of 40%, across the board, came with COVID-19.
Yes.
These problems did not start with COVID-19. Part of the figures that you did state were from 2015, 2017, before these cuts happened. And yet, these activities were going on in the wetlands. That level of degradation, those 2 percentage points that we lost were happening at the period where the budgets were there for that work.
Well, we can look at the trends in the budgets for these institutions, or for ENR, environment and natural resource funding. I think the biggest budget, for example, Nema has had is 25 billion in the last 5 years, which reduced from 25 to 13 billion because of COVID. And definitely 25 billion could be accounted for within the activities that have been done. It's not that the activities have not been done. If they have not been done, the situation could have been worse. The situation could have been worse. So there is work going on despite difficult situations. There is work going on.
Mr. Kareba, I'd like your comment on the issue, your final comment on the issue of budget and, degradation of wetlands before we move to another issue.
Yeah, just surprised because now when you talk about 13 billion being paid to people to sit in office, it gives me a bit of challenge. It challenges me now. It goes back now to legislators. If they cannot pay them to do the work, why would they pay them salary? Because contractually, if you're being paid a salary, you're supposed to deliver A, B, C, D. So on the salary that they earn, what do they deliver? Because now, if you're saying that money covers only salaries, why would you be paid a salary if you're not delivering anything against the contract which you signed? So to me, I think it goes back to what I earlier said. there are some activities that can be done with the funding that they get. This is a director who has just joined. I believe from this money, he should be able to do something, because at least he has, from the speaking, has a passion for environment. But the money that is given to start with, he should be able to do something.
Will you see the salary of a person per month and save some money? How would you do something?
Not really. Not
so
really.
Would you reduce the insurance? Would you reduce the rent, or what exactly would you cut?
No,
to be able to do something.
No, I mean, then why should you be paid for something that we're not going to deliver on? Then why are you paid? The question is, if you are not doing anything, what are you doing in offices?
Well,
why don't you stay at home?
They're employed.
You are asking the wrong question.
But also,
no, it's not wrong. You are saying you are being paid salary to do nothing.
Yes,
that is my understanding.
That question. That question.
Now, how do you account for the money that you are paid as salary?
Well, that question can best be answered by the employer. But I can give you answer that even without money, there are things we do. For example, assessments. You can still do assessments in office using technology. You can use GIS and remote sensing to still do verification and still do work. But even myself coming here is work.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Exactly, we are talking the same thing.
Quite interesting.
That thing should tantamount to rescuing and you delivering on the job.
It's going to be interesting.
We do
a lot of things.
what we can within the circumstances. Of course, you've been seeing, recently we suspended operations at night here. We halted the Chituburu Sudiru development for 3 months now. They are under our guidance. It's not that there is zero work being done, but what we are doing is not enough to address the tide of degradation that we have in the country. It's just a drop in the ocean. It's just a drop in the ocean.
All right. You mentioned earlier on that, in September, they suspended, the issuing of permits and licenses to do any developments in wetlands.
Yes. It was my first action in office.
Can you say here and now that, you cannot find a Nema issued permit from September?
Absolutely not. 2nd September 2021 to date, no single EIA certificate or a wetland user permit has been issued in a wetland. I can speak with confidence.
The other step you say
none, not even one.
Is there, and then now you are, going and assessing for where permits had been given. Are there some you've been able to cancel in this period?
No, we haven't been able to cancel any. To cancel is a process, really. You first have to give somebody compliance assistance, and they have to have failed to cope. So to cancel is a process, is a procedure. Otherwise, you can end up paying them even more money in addition to them degrading.
All right.
So it's a process that is judicious. It is a judicious process.
Okay. We need to take a break at this point. When we return, we'll look at other aspects of conservation of the environment and how we're doing. And, considering the experts that we have here, a way forward, even as Uganda joins the rest of the world in commemorating World Environment Day. Stay tuned, because after the break, we continue the discussion.
CTV is now on StarTime. You can now catch all your favorite programs, our daily comprehensive news bulletins, and so much more on StarTime's channel number 248. Stay tuned for a world of endless possibilities. CTV. Don't blink.
3 words: convenience, passion, and pride. introducing the KCCAFC app made for you to interact with the best football club in Uganda, giving you the latest news, transfers, membership options, merchandise online shop, match ticket bookings, and fan zone instant messaging. To download the beta app, go to Google Play Store on your Android and search for KCFC. Download the app, sign up, and voila, you're in. Yes, the app is only available for Android users. iOS users, we are coming soon. The KCCFC app, inspired by you, made for you.
Uganda has a budding film industry that will be celebrated at the Uganda Film Festival 2022. There'll be workshops, film screenings, and a world-class gala. Vote for your viewer's choice movie through the online voting platform that will be part of the drive as we use the creative sector as a solution to unemployment. The Uganda Film Festival is powered by the Uganda Communications Commission.
CTV, don't blink.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you for staying with us here on The Big Debate. This is, I'm your host, Iguma Gabriel, and today we're looking at matters environment as Uganda joins the rest of the world in commemorating World Environment Day. That will be on Sunday, 5th June 2022. Well, many people have traveled to Sweden, Stockholm in Sweden, to commemorate this 50th. It's been 50 years from the time these commitments were made, and it's a time to assess the progress that has been made. In the first segment of the show, we did look at where we stand as a country. We particularly talked about the issue of wetlands and what's being done to ensure that the wetlands are not degraded. We left off with the Executive Director of Nema stating very clearly that his first action in office was to suspend the issuing of licenses to do activities in wetlands. Our three guests, I have already mentioned the Executive Director of Nema. He is Dr. Barirega Akankwasa. We also have Mr. David Kureba, Senior Program Officer, National Association for Professional Environmentalists, and Honorable Nachimwero Christine Kaya. She is Shadow Minister for Water and Environment, and she's the woman MP for Chiboga District.
I greet you all.
your constituents. Yes, excellent. Now, the forest cover in the country is being lost at a worrying rate. A number of reports from Nema have stated that the situation is alarming. Yes, there were years where we started to do better, but again, trends are showing that we are regressing. I think the most recent that the public could be aware of is issues around Kagoma, Bugoma forest, and you will remember, issues of converting parts of other forests for the planting of sugar cane, Mavira, to be more specific. I would like to start with you, Mr. Kureba, on, the forests and the management of the forests. In your view, how are we doing and where are we getting it wrong?
Thank you so much. And you have rightly brought the issue that is at the backbone of climate change. Uganda is a signatory to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And certainly in Uganda we are losing a lot of forests per year. Bugoma forest lies in Alberta in Braben, where oil and gas is going to be mined. A number of roads have been constructed, the pipelines, the refineries, people displaced, and a lot of biodiversity is going to be lost. So the destruction of over 6,000 acres of 21 miles with the different segments that they put it under, the way Nema put it, to Ugandans was a disgrace for sure. Because this is not the time to destroy a natural forest. That was one. And it's not only that one. If you go to Karangara private forest, close to 40% of the forests were destroyed, put down by oil palm growers. If you go to Buvuma, it is the same story. The director will at some point go to these places, or probably he already has the information, but we are not doing well. And the reason is, like I said, they hinged this one to the budget. But for me, I think it is not the budget. Because if you look at the recent license that was issued to Bugoma Forest to destroy 21 miles of the forest, really, I think to me that was not right. If you look at aviation emissions, we are constructing an international airport. And probably I had thought at some point, I thought there was a link between the forest that was there and the airport. You have an airport with all those emissions, you have mining happening, you have all these vehicles, heavy machinery, and then all this forest goes across 7,000. To us, that was a disgrace. I think it goes back again, like I said, there is a challenge with the goodwill. How do you destroy a forest for diabetes? I mean, for sugarcane growing. Surely? How? On earth can that happen? You destroy an entire natural forest for diabetes? I think there is something that these people should really help us for sure. Because that is a disgrace to the nation, to the people of Uganda. It's more, Uganda is, the president was talking about rain-fed agricultural systems. We have not reached a level where you are able to pump water and start irrigating. It is not possible.
All right.
He's also talked about energy. Energy sources, you see these lights, not even including the director, you might find he also uses charcoal. You might find he uses charcoal. But the cost of running a cooker.
Yes, I did see a stat that 90% of Ugandans use wood fuel, this charcoal, and the other for their cooking needs. And
but
even
we have power in our houses. We have electricity in our houses.
And LPG, supplement it with a sack of charcoal here and there. But yes, since you're quoting the president also talked about need. Whereas yes, there is greed, there is a need as well. Could this account for the rate at which our forests are being degraded?
Yes. Look at the institutions that we have in this country. Look at the number of universities, close to 40 or so. All of them have residential students. They cook and they use firewood. Directly, there is nothing like, and they don't even use these improved ones, the energy saving systems. No, they use the rudimental ones. They bring all these. The 40,000 the president talked about, the 40 billion cubic meters of wood used. It comes from forests. It comes from private land. Yes, you talked about the increase in forests. No, the increase in forests, they have increased pine and eucalyptus, but the natural forests actually are reducing the more. If you look at these reports that come, that's why we're also pushing for independent forest monitoring that should be done annually. When there are reports of forest increase, then which forest and which species are we talking about? So the issue of energy, like the president talked about, we need to revise some of these taxes. Right. LGP, if you're talking about electricity, can it come down so that people are able to substitute electricity, for firewood, wood energy? That would be the alternative. If it could go down, and if there could be even sensitization. People need to be trained. It comes back to the money issue. Climate change to the local person has not trickled down to be understood clearly. The use of a tree. A person looks at the tree and it's kind of, they monetize. When people put money on everything, then it is bound to go. But the moment you look at this tree and you say this tree is 100,000, you know anytime it is going. But the moment you look at this tree and see it as something that gives you life, and something that you can pick dead wood from, and something that gives you shade, gives you rain, then it will live more.
All right. In the forest, what of the balance of the need to bring development, to actually have, these factories and, how do you balance that with conservation?
Yeah, we are not saying we only conserve. But now, there should be a balance. In the event that now, development should not be going to the forest, given the rate at which forests are going. And the establishment of such, for example, if I could bring the example of the sugarcane plantation, it could be put anywhere else. We still have vast land where such establishment could be put, not necessarily in the forest. You see? So, if, for example, one was complaining about a sugarcane plantation being put, maybe in grassland or an area that is not forested, that would not be genuine. We would say you can't conserve everything. But now if you have a small patch of forest and you continue to encroach on it really, when very many other forests have gone and the remaining forest is also going, surely that would be unfair to the climate, to the earth that we live in. It would be unfair to even our future generation.
All right. Honorable, on how we're doing in relation to forests and where we're getting it wrong.
We are looking at the forests. The biggest challenge now is climate change. Climate change affects the way we preserve our trees and also wetlands. The reason why people are going into wetlands, it is because wetlands are moist all the time. And given the drought conditions in very many parts of Uganda, people opt for wetlands. The same applies to forest land. Sugarcane growers feel those are virgin areas that are still moist, that will enable their sugarcane thrive. Even the same applies to rice growers and some agriculturists. They feel they should cut the forests and probably go for it, or use the forest for fuel. And it is a challenge these days, because when you look at how we grew up, where we grew up from, we used to have thickets where we would collect firewood from. But recently, the thickets have actually become town councils. There is some form of sudden urbanization, and so the thickets are now in urban councils, and so they are no more. So what we do is to look at forest land and now begin doing what? Cutting the trees. And people would wish, actually very many women would wish to use clean cooking methods. We do not want charcoal, it is dirty in the first place. Fetching firewood also takes a lot of our time, and it is also still dirty. Actually, many women would go in for LPG, low power gas, or solar, or use hydro electricity in cooking. How would you use that? Despite the fact that there are a lot of gender issues brought in by cultures, that probably water boiled on a stove, as if it doesn't reach 100 degrees. Some people think it has not boiled properly. That food prepared on a cook stove takes a lot of time. Others even say it is not tasty. That food prepared from biogas technology, that it is not clean. And then the way we also cook, the sustainability of the squeezed matoke on firewood is not possible on LPG. All cookers, what in Uganda they call okubobeza, sustaining the cooking of matoke such that it becomes very soft. That one can only be possible with the wood fuel, where if you have a sigiri, you put some ash, or you still put ash for firewood. So it is not very, and yet the community here loves eating such matoke. And actually it is a serious yardstick for somebody to prefer you to others. You know, this one even knows how to cook matoke very well. That is the very well they are talking about. So there are still some gender issues, generated issues that take us back. You know, you may prepare everything on gas, on electricity, but when you are going to prepare matoke, you look for firewood or charcoal. So there are still some cultural setbacks. But there are a lot of issues behind that. For us as environmentalists, with the growing challenge in climate change, we are looking at trees as absorbers of greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. Yes, there are a lot of functions. There are a lot of tree functions. We don't defy that. But these days we have to look so much at the contribution of trees in absorbing the greenhouse gases, because that is the challenge. If they don't absorb the greenhouse gases and we continue spoiling the ozone layer, the effects out of that are enormous.
All right. Some people feel like Parliament did not do enough when it came to, Bugoma Forest, and yet, you're clearly stating the benefit of having, natural forests, because even as we talk about the forest cover increasing, and like Mr. Kureba is saying that we're growing pine and eucalyptus. Well, a lot of times this is grown for a period of time and then it will be harvested to be sold. So it's not going to be there for long enough.
There is also another challenge related to what you are submitting, which many natural resources activists are undermining: the issue of land management, land tenure systems. Now, when you look at Bugoma Forest, based on the analysis we made, there are a lot of challenges with the land tenure of where Bugoma stands. And much of the decisions are made by the landowner. So what we say that this is a gazetted forest area may not actually be the same on the ground. I don't know if you get it.
Parts of the forest actually
Parts
belong
of the forest
people, and they have
belong
titles.
to, yes, and they have titles. And now when you have a land title, that belongs to Ugandans. You have the freedom to probably reduce on the acreages the way you want, much as the public feels, and we are attaching much of that blame to Nema. But I think also National Investment Authority has something to do with allocations, these allocations.
That Nema usually license.
Licenses. The same applies to wetlands. These ones come in with the environment and social impact assessments. But allocation of land for investment, also NPA, National Planning Authority, the Investment Authority must be asked seriously. Because sometimes we even complain about the placements of some activities, and we only to be abused that you are sabotagers of investors. You are sabotaging investment. So sometimes I listen to the president and I'm like, because I have not got a good deal from, for example, sugar factories. They are increasing in number, but the price of sugar is not reducing. What is the problem? And then, some time back, I think it is some 4 years back, when we established a monitoring, reporting, and verification point within the climate change department in the Ministry of Water and Environment. This department, this initiative was supposed to help us calculate the rate of carbon that every sector is emitting, that every activity is emitting. And we ensured that we provide for that measurement even in the Climate Change Act. But
did you provide the funding to do it?
Now, that is where the issue comes in. Because look at the trillions you are looking at. If we are looking at raising 48 trillions as Ugandan budget for 2022, 2023, but the collections amount to only 25 trillions. And remember, we have debts. You already see a challenge there. We are not able to finance. So actually, when you are reading the list of unfunded priorities, you even get tired.
All right. Now, Honorable, back to Parliament's role in relation to, conserving the environment, or, giving effect to, some of these laws that we have actually passed. When it comes to, Bugoma, as an example, it was asked, it was demanded that Parliament do more. Why wasn't Parliament seen to do more?
We are even still doing more.
When the forest is already gone.
We are still doing more. I've told you.
What was required of Parliament that they didn't do? Maybe let's understand it.
Yes. No, they wanted us to probably undress.
Let's understand.
No.
Yes, that is what that is what people want. That is the activism that people want to see. But to me, when I looked at Bugoma issue, every natural resource has its own dynamics. We looked at Bugoma issue. The biggest challenge has to do with the land tenure, the land ownership of the forest. The chunks that you think are gazetted as government land is not part of it. Okay. It's actually for Banyoro, is for the Bunyoro kingdom. And so it means that we need to go and bow to the king of Bunyoro, not to allow the sugar factory to. They are just increasing on the acreages. They are not yet through with everything. So we can still bow, but these contracts, didn't we suffer a lot with the coffee agreement? It is not easy to cancel them. So we needed to bow to the king or to the Bunyoro leadership to, not to allow. But that is another challenge that we are working on, to ensure that we pay people who decide to leave tree standing should be paid.
All right. I wonder whether we can afford that, because we will start calling upon the development partners to come in and do that.
They are coming up.
Dr. Akankwasa, when it comes to, the forest and the degradation of the forest, what are the plans to ensure that, we are not losing, that much forest cover? We may not be able to bring the degradation to zero, but, using them in a sustainable way, but also increasing so that the environment does not suffer those negative impacts.
First, to clarify, Nema has never approved any certificate or environment and social impact assessment for anybody to convert Bugoma Central Forest Reserve into sugarcane. That's not true. That's a rumor, it's a lie, which we should dispel. I think the land being talked about, as Honorable has said, is land contiguous with Bugoma Central Forest Reserve, which is private land owned by the Kingdom of Bunyoro. And we can go into details of that if you wish. So it's not true that Bugoma Central Forest Reserve was given away by government for sugarcane. This matter went to court, and the court pronounced itself on the matter. It is something that has been adjudicated. So it is not something that is hanging. It has been adjudicated, evidence has been adduced, and the court ruled that the land we are talking about is not part of Bugoma Central Forest Reserve. So what remains for us is to monitor and ensure that the land that was approved for proportion for sugarcane, because according to information on record, what was approved was just 10% of the private land. The other 90%, 60% of it was supposed to remain as intact forest, and then the other percent was supposed to go into administrative zones and then tourism. So we are currently doing an environment audit of the private land where this activity is taking place, and once the audit is out, we shall know whether they have followed the conditions in the environment and social impact assessment or not. So it is not true and it is not correct to put on record that this activity is in Bugoma Central Forest Reserve, where the court has pronounced itself over the matter. So we can wait for the environmental audit. When it comes up, we shall be able to tell whether they have complied or they have not complied.
A quick comment from you, yes?
A quick comment is that the boundary has never been opened, and the director, you are well aware. And the reason as to why there are contestations and why the boundary should be opened is to ascertain whether or not the activity got into the Central Forest Reserve. So for you to say it doesn't touch, you cannot prove now until when the boundaries have been opened.
Well, the exercise to open the boundary commenced, and as you are aware, it was challenged and refused by the kingdom, the landowners, and so we are trying to still manage that dispute, and then the boundaries can be opened. But from the government side, Ministry of Lands was ready, even the surveyors were on the ground opening the boundaries. So from the government point of view, the government is ready to open the boundaries, and it is the neighbors, the neighboring communities that sabotaged the process of opening the boundaries, and we still hope that these boundaries must be opened and will be opened so that we know the truth.
Exactly, I think that's the point now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and then...
Now, I was coming to forests in general. First of all, I want to state that, like everyone has said, forests are very important for climate change amelioration, for wood production and economic development, for energy, you know, as we all know, medicinal plants, for tourism, as habitats, you know, as biodiversity in itself, etc. And so we have no choice but to restore our forest cover. 1900, Uganda, almost 45% of Uganda was covered by forests. 1900. We've gone reducing and losing the forest cover. 1990, we went to 24%. We reached a tipping point in 2017 where we were remaining with only 9% of the forest cover. But I am happy to say that the country has been able to successfully put a halt to further loss of forest cover, and the tide has now changed. We've increased our forest cover from 9% in 2017 to now 13% in 2019. So this is something to celebrate.
When I quoted that,
something at least to celebrate.
When I quoted that, Mr. Kureva asked, what is the, yes, we're talking the quantity there, what's the quality of what we are adding? Because
let me tell you,
you're cutting a tree that has been there 50 or so years, and then you're going for pine, and you're going for eucalyptus that you're going to keep for a couple of years, and then you're going to turn that into money.
We need to contextualize that debate, because 90% of forest cover that we've lost was not in protected areas. It was outside the protected areas on private land. And this land has been converted into agriculture. So if an investor or you, Gabriel, you have your land and you've planted the pine, we should say thank you. It is good progress, because you are buffering the protected areas which have natural trees. You will provide a source for wood, you will provide a source for timber, and so you will reduce further stress and further pressure on the protected areas where we have indigenous trees. But it's also not true that we have planted only exotic trees. NFA has been distributing indigenous trees for free. You can apply to NFA and you get indigenous trees for free. Just last week but one, we were at Entebbe Botanical launching the 40 million tree initiative, which was launched by the Vice President, where the target is to plant at least 40 million trees every year. These are not only pine. Pine is mainly for business people, the investors, who we commend, by the way, because we need the pine also. We are not saying we should replace natural forests with the pine, no. But where you have bare land and you've put pine, we shouldn't castigate it. It is value for environment, it is value for economy, it is value for climate. For your information, pine has a very high capacity for absorption of greenhouse gases, because, as you know, wood has actually 90% plus of wood is carbon, and so these are very good for business and climate management. The downturn is if you use them for firewood, you will return carbon back into saturation. But if you use them for timber, for example, you will have managed carbon. That's permanently stored carbon. If your roof is timber, that's carbon there captured. So it is value for climate. It only becomes bad if you burn it as fuel wood. That's when you've returned back the carbon into the atmosphere. All right.
Can I just get a quick comment from Mr. Kureba just before I come back to you in relation to a suggestion that Honorable made here, and to just find out how is it done in other countries where people are encouraged and then even paid for to plant and to also keep trees that they have on their private land, because it's starting to sound that like where we're at, as long as you have trees on your land, you can treat them the way you want, and there's nothing that can be done about it.
Thank you so much. I think the issue of incentivization is very, very important, and like Honorable said, people should be paid. If you look at all the vehicles that come into this country, they are paid a polluter pay tax. Where does that money go? Why wouldn't that money go to people who are keeping their trees for permanency reasons? I think we have the money that can pay these people. If you look at the amount of money that is collected, I don't have the figures offhand, but if you look at the taxes that have been collected on all the vehicles, and it is never plowed back into environment, if it could be given to small forest holders as incentivization methods, I think we would be having a lot of trees sequestering carbon. If you have 20 trees, I have 20, this one has 20. By the time you finish the entire village, you have sequestered tons and tons of carbon dioxide. You don't need to have one investor with 40, 50 acres. No, you can consider the small holders with these very good natural trees, and eventually you will have your carbon sequestered. You encourage boundary planting, and you incentivize them.
All right.
Yes. There is a carbon market now. Honorable was part of this discussion in Scotland. The carbon trade rules book was finally agreed upon by the world in Scotland, and so the incentives are there. Actually, if you keep forests on your private land, there is value for it. Soon people should be able to sell carbon credits on their private land, both to national and international markets. At Nema, we are discussing the net zero emission concept, where we are going to require industrialists. If you are an industrialist, you must be able to have net zero emissions. How do you get it? By practicing cleaner production so that you reduce emissions, and then the residual emissions, you should be able to have a sink, your own sink, to absorb them. And if you don't have your own sink, you should be able to buy credits at the national level from somebody who is keeping a sink. So people should not lose hope that they can't benefit from forests on their private land. There is value, actually, both economic, ecological, and social value.
All right. Part of the effects that we've been seeing, you know, and you did talk about effects and people actually, you know, feeling the pinch, have been some of the natural disasters. But I don't know, do people attribute these to, you know, one, climate change, but also the activities that are dangerous for the environment?
You know, the poverty we are in now as Uganda, people are going to do all sorts to ensure that they stay alive. We are actually challenged by, for example, complete stopping of charcoal burning. And Uganda, we are poor at providing alternatives. When you chase away hawkers from the roadsides, you don't provide an alternative. When we chase our people from wetlands, from gazetted forests,
the hawkers were put in some of the markets.
No, the alternatives are not
viable alternatives.
They are not viable, and people cannot even use them. When we chased our, when we chased our people from the wetlands, where did we take them? Every go and toil and suffer on your own. The same applies to biomass. When you tell people use less of firewood, charcoal, and let's go for these other cleaner options, the alternative we are giving is very expensive. LPG is expensive. Iyaka. But recently we managed to bargain. In the coming financial year, Iyaka may shift from 900 Uganda shillings per unit to 700 Uganda shillings. But it's still high. Because I looked at Vinci's agreement, the coffee agreement that we recently chased away, it had a provision of providing that investor electricity and unit per yaka was, he was going to pay 114 Uganda shillings. And he was a new investor to Uganda. So, if you feel that
electricity for industrial use is cheaper. Okay, this was below the
yes,
current
it is
rate,
cheaper, but when you look at the comparisons of the destruction, the rest of the people contribute a lot to the loss of biomass. And so we are working towards that. You know, every
so like when people see, you know, floods and landslides,
yes,
do they attribute this to their activities?
Some of them do attribute, but they have nothing to do. They say we have nothing to do. Are you aware that there are people from the Elgon mountains that were removed from the mountains?
And they found their way back.
Yes.
They are already back.
Yeah.
So what are you saying? So they were provided with land. They were, okay, actually the areas where they were taken were really not good. And based on our cultures, we have a lot of cultural setbacks. How do I leave my grandfather's graveyards in the mountains? I have to go back. I am not sleeping. The dead are calling me back. So people still went back. And also the issue of fertility. They were comparing the fertility rates in the mountains and the fertility rates, the soil fertility in the areas that they were taken to, and they felt, no, this is a serious issue. We have to go back. So actually that others issue of loss of soil fertility, people even sometimes forget the effect of climate change on soil fertility.
Mr. Kureba, how do we draw the cause and effect so that people can see that their activities or the way they use the environment is, you know, partly, you know, the reason for the effects they are seeing, things like landslides, like floods. You know, we talk about the lake has, you know, has come to claim back its space and things like that.
Thank you. You know, it may not be easy to explain to a person who is used to staying in a mountain, in a highly fertile land, and you take this person to an area which is less fertile. Yes, it is true that some people know, but I think there are no alternatives. There are no alternatives. Take an example, communities already know that cutting trees is really very bad. But now, cooking is becoming a problem. I was recently in Mbarara. Getting firewood is a problem. In my own village, I'm telling you, firewood is more expensive than even it is in Kampala here. Some families which used to have 3 meals in a day, they have 1 meal. So the trees are gone, people already know, but I think there isn't anything that these people can actually do. Very many children are
do we then raise our hands in
information on what you're saying? Applications for degazettement. Recently we were talking
yes,
with
and
the
we've been
minister.
hearing about them in Parliament.
Yes, there are still applications for degazetments.
And it's the communities
We
that are
have
making these
finally
requests.
accomplished all our private forests, the way the director was pointing out. And it is not enough for us. We are also continuing to degazette the available public forests. And some applications are from known institutions. Gulu University presented this application. And the procedure for degazettements are well articulated in the Tree Planting Act, that first plant acreage commensurate to what you are going to apply for. But people just bring in the applications. When you look at the...
And
we don't
then
know
do these applications pass?
No. Since the 11th Parliament, no application for degazettement has been approved. Look at the way we are entertaining refugees. Yes, we ratified this somewhere. But we need to know our capacity as Uganda. We cannot continue allowing everybody to enter, just come in. And when they are encroaching on natural resources, nothing complete is done about that. So we need to know our capacity.
All right.
Where shall we end?
If I could bring the Executive Director in for his quick comment in relation to, degradation and, natural disasters and the link, because it's important for the communities to see the link in order for them to take steps to change their behavior.
I think, as everyone is saying, the problem is not largely because of people not knowing. I don't want to think so. I believe in a continuous education and sensitization, but I also know that awareness is not the biggest cause of environment degradation. People know. People know that forests create rain. People know that forest is good for environment. They know. The curriculum is now integrated. Even people in nursery school, they study these things. They know. Largely the question is alternatives, affordability of alternatives. I can tell you, if we said let's stop charcoal today, there are very many people who will not eat. So many people who will not eat.
All right.
So the solution is we are encouraging people to do charcoal farming. In northern Uganda, we've engaged the communities to plant fast-growing trees, which are good for charcoal, so that people can do charcoal farming. They can create their own woodlots to create charcoal as we transition into green energy. It is going to be a process, really. Right. It can't be an event.
Speaking about total bans, reminds me of a certain ban that has been announced, let's call it de-announced, announced again. Let's talk a bit about pollution and, Nema and the famous or infamous Kavera as, one of the, biggest issues we are having, when it comes to pollution. Where do we stand with, that issue?
Yeah, we've had the debates, we've had the, I would say, engagements on banning single-use plastics. The current status is that the law bans single-use plastics of 30 microns and below. 30 microns and above, the law does not prohibit. That's the challenge we have. Because to a common person, you can't distinguish between 30 microns and 31 microns. You will require a laboratory analysis to differentiate between the two. So what we request from our honorable members of parliament through the honorable
Shadow Minister
for Water and Environment is to have a total ban for single-use plastics and avoidable plastics like these ones. We shouldn't be drinking water in these bottles. The world has since moved away from these bottles. We need to go back to glass bottles, because you can use the glass bottles over and over again. We should get away from avoidable plastics or single-use plastics.
When you go elsewhere, there is a culture of recycling. We don't have that culture here.
Where recycling has limitations, I can use this example. If you get this bottle and drink this water, you cannot actually recycle the bottle back to this bottle. Plastics use primary materials to create a transparent bottle like this. But you can recycle this used bottle to create, say, a basin or a jerry can, but you cannot create back the transparent plastics. So that would mean that we shall continue adding more plastics if we do not ban single-use plastics. The alternatives are there. People can use fabric bags. People can use paper bags. We have been working with Uganda Investment Authority to promote industries that produce alternatives. If you've been observant, there are several now fabric bags around, and we should encourage our people to move away from single-use plastics to alternatives which are now there. The banned
ones are also still out there. The banned ones are also still out there.
The banned ones, even recently we had an operation with UNBS, the lowest enforcement of the ban against 30 microns and below to UNBS, because it is a laboratory issue. Your eyes cannot tell between 30 microns and 31 microns. It's not possible to tell with the
you know, when the first ban came around, yes, you're not able to say it accurately, but you will touch a polythene bag and you know the texture of it, and the ones that
this
were banned.
Is 30, this is 31.
No, that's just between 30 and 31, but there are wider ones. You know, there are wider ranges where you do hold the polythene, and even if it's black, you can almost see a light through it.
Our view is that enforcement of 30 microns and below is not feasible. We try at the factory level. We go sampling with UNBS. If we find you manufacturing above 30, you are penalized.
Below?
Below. You are penalized because it is prohibited by law. The law also requires that manufacturers of plastics must label, because there is what we call producer extended responsibility. The producer of plastic by our law is supposed to be responsible for collecting it back from the environment.
Okay.
That's the law. Yeah. But we haven't seen success.
That hasn't been implemented.
So the best way is to
a total ban
of avoidable. You may not ban all plastics, but avoidable plastics.
You're right.
Kenya has done it. Rwanda has already done it.
Tanzania is starting to implement, because once you land in Tanzania, you actually hear it at the airport.
It's not rocket science at all.
I'd just like to ask our two panelists, would you like to quickly comment on that, or can we go to our closing, you know, because we are now out of time?
Yes, sudden urbanization, like I said. One of the items that were completely forgotten at the establishment of some of these trading centers is waste management. You find that a town council has to wait for a truck from another town council, receives it once a month, and even the disposal areas were not demarcated and are not anywhere. And then we have challenges with collection of the wastes.
Right.
Like it would be possible for us to recycle these plastics, but how do we collect them? And because we fail to collect them, that is how we fail recycling of some of these materials. So technology transfer in waste management is still needed heavily here in Uganda.
It's expensive technology.
It's expensive, but when you look at the products are sellable. the products are available, and this can enable the investors reap back their investment. So we are calling on different investors. We need to interest private investment in our sector. Many of the things are not paying back. Many of the options are not paying back. But we need government to subsidize our people such that they are able to invest in this sector. And that is when we shall now reduce on pollution.
Okay.
And so I think I better say bye-bye to
No, I'm going to come back to you for your parting shot. So, Mr. Kureba, your quick comment on that.
You're raising a very pertinent issue. Even in the communities, polythene bags are a menace, are a problem. They have killed animals, goats and cows. It goes back to what the director mentioned. My 31, 32, 33, I think members of parliament, the advantage is that we are represented here. We have a member of parliament here with us. Legislate that single-use plastics should be banned.
All right.
As simple as that.
Panelists, you will remember what happened when that was attempted. You know, the lobbying that went on and what have you. How will that be avoided? Because
we should not lose hope.
No,
we can try again.
No. What happened was that the legislators made a confusion. You cannot tell me that anything below 30 microns. How do I measure a micron? 32, 33, 34. How do I measure it? But if it was explicit that single-use plastics are banned, you'd not confuse us within the microns. Would not have.
Onto that.
You see?
Was the investors in the polythene business?
Yeah, that's what
because there was a heavy lobby there.
Yes, yeah,
it's a strong one.
They have a strong.
It's a very strong
but
one.
now
It still exists, but we must
still
agree
exists.
that we now have alternatives.
Yeah.
These investors are not going to close shop. They can actually shift the production lines to producing alternatives. The machinery will be still the same. So we are not saying close your factories, no.
Okay. Well,
produce something that can be reused, that can be used several times rather than producing something that is going to kill the environment.
Okay.
Yes.
We're out of time, so I will come to each one of us for our parting shot. Mr. Kureba, I will begin with you.
Thank you for inviting me, but I just want to leave one important aspect. We are living in only one earth. We must protect it, we must conserve it, and we must restore it. Climate change is hitting hard. Time to act and treat our environment responsibly is now, or else we perish.
All right. Thank you very much. Executive Director?
Well, I want to call upon Ugandans, including myself, to come to understanding that we cannot live in an environment that we have degraded. We cannot have life without environment. We are part and integral part of the environment, and so we must protect it. That aside, I want to invite all citizens and all people living in Uganda to join us on 5th June in Ruwero, Kasana Playground, to come and commemorate the 50 years of existence of environment management movement. Lots of progress has been made in policy and institutional development. Challenges are there, but they are manageable. We can still win the battle.
Doctor, aren't we going to just make more commitments that we are not going to be able to implement?
Well, I've told you that since 1990, we've been able to have, for the first time, a net gain in forest cover. So these things are possible. We just need to recommit. If every citizen, every Ugandan plants and grows 1 tree in a year, those are 40 million trees in just 1 year.
Is that
that's
feasible?
The roots program.
Is that feasible? Every Ugandan planting 1 tree,
yes,
and that tree actually growing.
That's what we launched. That's the roots program. Running out of trees program is estimating that we have 45 million or so. They are children that may not be able, but a parent can even plant for them. So it is something achievable, absolutely achievable.
Land grabbing that is happening
You can plant in your hedges of your farm. We are going to plant in road reserves. UNRWA has availed road reserves. We are going to plant in military barracks, police barracks, prison barracks, schools, and so it is feasible.
Well, I would just add that since almost every family has a place where they bury their people, let's encourage them to, you know, plant trees in that area at least, because we know we're not going to quickly move that. Well, don't, but they still get alternatives.
It's feasible.
Honorable, your parting shot?
Dear viewers, there are a lot of processes going on, especially in the political space. We are looking out for election of our women councils. But we request that in the manifestos of the candidates, at least environmental management stands out clearly, because this is what will direct many of the activities, especially in our rural areas. We emphasize that we have one planet Earth. Yes, people are up there trying to show us that there are other planets, but the way planet Earth can sustain us as humans has never been seen anywhere in planet. So we are supposed and we are mandated forcefully. We have even to put affirmative actions, deliberate actions, to ensure that planet Earth is preserved and its environment is kept safe for us all. And on that note, I also thank teachers and institutions, religious institutions, that have given in portions of land, that have opted for tree planting as an enterprise, that have included the tree planting in your planned parish development model activities. We are very grateful. We are grateful to cultural institutions that have also thought about tree planting as a serious action. We are grateful to the Uganda institution that owed us a full week of reminding us about environmental management, and we are calling on everybody to actually walk the talk of environmental management as we celebrate 50 years of celebrating this International Day.
All right.
Yes.
We have one Earth. If we take care of it, it will take care of us. It is actually possible for humans and the environment to live together in harmony. But you and I have a critical role to play in ensuring that that happens. So play your part as I play my part. From our panelists for the big debate today, and from myself, would like to thank you for being part of the conversation. Until next week, when we come back with another debate, good night, God bless you, don't blink.